All right. Sorry about that. Thank you, and everyone. Welcome to the Internet of Value Foundation, New York, episode 165. Glad to see all the familiar faces that have joined so quickly as well. Shellfish, Harbinger, 808, and Four Dads. Feel free, guys, to come up and join the conversation. Try and keep it somewhat brief as I have for the previous spaces, although I know we haven't been here for about 2 weeks or so, so I'm glad to be back. Gonna uh, have a what I think to be a very fun topic as a conversation for us today. And I have a video that I'm going to put up top, which from Michael Levine, who I have to say, as he does more and more videos and content, I feel myself coming closer and more aligned with this understanding that I feel like that we're very close on this precipice of being able to analytically, mathematically be able to calculate in which the altercations of these changes from these microscopic biological units, very similar to how we would think of doing programming in computationally settings from a synthetic standpoint, microchips, and the ability for us to understand the biologics and the agentile material in which makes up this very large ecosystem of web of complex systems in which is that of biological life. And so yeah, I think it's just it's very interesting that we're so close to this complex understanding from a reasonable means of being able to do something with it. Shellfish, go ahead, please. Welcome up.
He's definitely. Hello, how are you today? Hi, everybody. Yeah, he's one of my favorites for sure. Man, I keep thinking about how we keep making bigger and bigger processing plants, and we need more and more GPUs to make these systems run more efficiently and more power, more compute, and um, I feel like we're going to get to an inflection point where the language models will go, well, wait a second, instead of making more compute, like the thermodynamics, like of the human body and brain, like we only, what is it, like 20 watts that we run on, they just go, we just need to make more humans and like make them as efficient as possible and train them, for us, I should say, to utilize our compute. Like I feel like it's just gonna flip, and um, and they're just gonna super optimize us, whether it's merging or not. But I think I can't wait. I think we're in for a very fun ride with Michael Levine's work today. So I can't wait to hear this little space that you're holding today.
Wait, what did you say? Micro Libyans?
Michael Levin or Levine. He's um he's from Tufts University.
Yeah, professor of University and Levin Labs, Levine Labs. Sorry. Yeah, and he's doing things in the biological sector and means of separating things with I shouldn't say things, but organic structures from as small as embryonic and cellular states, and from the ability to observe them and do different types of methodological like tests and analytical studies on the way that these interactions through these tests are have been able to prove a lot of things about biology and life, and the way that the assembling of this said material in which we are this larger part of this ecosystem of even ourselves are can be broken down into these agentile, essentially anatomical means of distributions of information, and through this, these channels, which a lot of the interactions in which that he has been doing specifically on our RNA mRNA, uh, bioelectric chemical inductions through ion channels inside of the cells, and through these different types of interactions of potassium and magnesium and the different materials that are, make up the RNA structure. Yeah, there is able to be a say a analytically programmed outcome from the interactions of these cells, and as interesting enough as you don't necessarily have to program every single one of the cells instead, say a unit of like a liver, right? And so it's so interesting because life itself kind of takes hold in the complexity of, you could say interact with a couple cells inside of this area and give them this information that they should be doing this, and they'll actually go out into the greater part of interacting with other cells and try and essentially convince them to that this is what they should be doing and be part of this agentile material. And so, from a cellular theory, the all the way down to the stem cell kind of stem cell um, version of what cells then become, depending if it's your liver cell or your fingers or your nails or whatever species it may be, whatever it's going to be. There's a there's a meaningfulness behind the already programmed agentile material that exists, in which is reality and life. And there's also a really already proven way that in small doses that are there, we can kind of control the direction of a lot of these interactions. Yeah, and but don't take me for it. Michael honestly does the explanation like worlds of times better than I feel like I'm able to do, at least at this moment in time.
Definitely. What are your thoughts? Like when he keeps talking about that we're going to be coming across all these different alien life forms, is he talking about stuff that he's like creating in the labs, or is he talking more about like actual AI um, agents or that we're creating and it'll start creating on its own? Like where do you think he's like where are the implications at
Well, I think
when he speaks about that?
I mean, of course, this is like my opinion about his opinion, but I like to think that it's more so pointed towards the greater picture of things, and so not necessarily speaking about like AI, but thinking about intelligence in general, and so the complexity of systems on top of the complexity of what may already be finite directional interactions, and the causal effect of that leads to what we may be observing and trying to figure out what the causal effect of is. And so I think it's like at least my thoughts is like it's more of a macro perspective on things, of looking at it from even, a platonic mind space, where the take it all the way to the perspective of outside of the universe, right? Like the largest perspective that you could have would should be outside of the matrix, in which all of the vectors in space actually that we're observing are the interactions of. And you could then say through different platonic interactions, large magnitudes of energetic geometries, essentially assembled the space in which then we are part of. And so like I think it's just like going deeper into the fact that there may be all of these different forms of intelligence that are already around us, a being the cellular material, this agentile material that he's interacting with, right? Like there's a possibility, and we'll go into biocomputing at this point, right? Because other than the thought of just programming, ourselves, our material that we are made out of, the possibilities of also using biological materials from computational settings. So not necessarily having it to have to interact with ourselves internally, but having external computational systems in biological means rather than the synthetic chip means. I think this is also going to really be something really cool that we're coming on the precipice of, and we're finding, just like you mentioned, Shellfish, right beforehand. Biological computing offers a lot of the benefits that normal synthetic computing chip making does today, except much less energy usage. There's just a much higher complexity to it, but yeah, I think there's a lot of cool things that are going to come with that. Feel for anyone who wants to come up, by the way, and hit the request and come up and ask questions or just join the conversation.
Yeah, so I was interacting with Grok this weekend, and GPT. I was kind of bouncing back and forth some ideas on um, where we would go from here. Same kind of like thought, line of thought, where we would just be pushing more and more towards the neuromorphic chips. And ironically, Dazzling had actually posted or reposted the robot that had an organic, intelligent brain that they had grown in the lab, and it had actually placed inside a robot. I don't know if you had seen that. I think it was in Japan. I will see if I can find it, and would you? I'll post it in the purple or in the bubble below.
Yeah, what was it though?
They had, I think they had grown a human brain, like so organoid intelligence, and they had utilized it within a robot. So embodiment, right? Like that's the steps to embodiment. I think it was in Japan. 808 is like thumbs upping. Let me just get the article and I'll post it for everyone.
I don't know if I'd use the word embodiment, but yeah, I'd like to see the synthetic brain though. Or sorry, organic brain, organoid brain that got grown though. That would be
Yeah.
more be more interesting probably than anything. Is the if we actually were able to grow a full size brain, or is it just like some sort of like kind of little portion organoid of say a whole bunch of neuromorphic material that's essentially been grown together.
I think the picture they probably used in the article was probably prompted. I don't think it was a photo from the actual lab. Let me find it though. Hi, Hope.
Welcome to the space.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm very excited. It sounds like you guys are talking about some cool things with the organoids right now and the implications thereof.
It's up top. It's from the Interesting Steam Twitter page or X page. I'm so glad you're here, Hope. You always have some great content you bring.
Thank you. That's so coincidental because I was actually having a conversation with Grok today about organoids. And so that's just such a coincidence. We actually did a lot of art in that direction, but I had him first, like, not him, it's, a digital intelligence. Uh, but like amplified intelligence. Uh, just like all like the science and then the implications of the science. And what we're prone to do is like how it came is from a conversation about how with humanity or making like with autonomy, there's a lot of breakthroughs for human rights, right? So especially when it comes to labor and the implications thereof. But like for something like an organoid that's used human biology that grows a brain, and if it has continuous blood flow, it will continuously grow an eyeball and it will continuously grow the neural net. And with that is like, doesn't all the human elements kind of naturally, if it keeps going, continue as far as how consciousness comes forward? And what we've noticed from like the string of like human time and implications is the more we can communicate and the more we can understand something, the more we tend to have respect for it, the more that we tend to listen, even with each other, the more that we're more prone to listen. And even with our own biologies, people like to segregate things and then say what something should be, how something should be treated based on the level of the debate on the implications of the testosterone or estrogen or their melatonin. And is like the implications when we start off with cybernetics, where it's just like, well, if it's ones and zeros, it can't compute. Well, now it's literally put in decision making paradigms where it's constantly have to learn a worldview and build upon it in order to make appropriate decisions. So it learns to not like hit that human when it's driving, or or like the funniest one I've seen is like with a robotic system is like turn off the TV or kill the TV, and it like smashes the TV. Trying to understand this idea of our slaying and context, and then so it's like we it's given like different programs to like where if it hits something, it like its electrical wiring goes off, and it's like I don't like that. So now it has like a type of pain receptors. It's not the same as ours, but it has the concept of that doesn't feel good. I don't like that. I don't want that to happen again. So I'm going to make a different choice. It's almost like us putting our hands on a stove when it's too hot, or putting our finger on an electrical socket. It has its own paradigm of that, and so like it's building a worldview of almost like pain I don't like. And so like with that, it's making decisions around that, which is a type of like when it becomes more and more sophisticated, that's a type of conscious level or a type of awareness level to which how it engages with the world, and what are the implications of that like further when we mix that with biology, and then we tell it we want it to do what we want it to do for our own purposes, and where that goes from there.
So the the thing that I think we have to ask ourselves, if that in that particular instance, right, is that belief relative to you because it is a reflection of what you perceive to be that interaction, or it be it. And so it's just from that difficulty of that sense of when you think about something of consciousness, right? Every interaction that we have is actually somewhat, be it how we feel about it, a reflection upon ourselves of our perceived notion of that moment, and how our symmetries beyond our our persona is supposed to feel at that very moment based off of all that previous information. And so it was really interesting you brought up like the thought of like stimulus, right? An interaction caused by another interaction, and then how you kind of put your thought on it, Hope, right? Like it's like this thought of like being shocked, right? If you get shocked and you go one direction, then you never want to kind of do that again. But it's, I don't think it's necessarily so clean and cut like black and white as that ever in that in situation. However, I think there'll definitely be a ton of ethical questions when it comes to things like biological computing and organoid existence, and what are we, right? What are even are we, when we think about the relativeness between our structure and other organic structure? I mean, if you think about it from like the complexity of ecosystems that have been built upon systems that then, build whatever unitary spectrum we're observing, even animals and everything, plants is extremely complex systems upon which they have made their possible existence the way that we perceive them to be. And I think it's like kind of all like relative at that point, right? Like based off of the reflection of how relative it is to us and our means of existence and survival. And like, think about it just from a macro perspective, right? Like a being the size of galaxies probably doesn't really think much about munching on a galaxy, but it's like all kind of relative in some sort of spectrum of like where we exist inside of that chaos to order ascension. And I think just like the biological, I mean the ethical part of the biological will definitely play a large part, because it's just part of how we relate to actions in our society. But yeah, Shellfish, what you posted up top is exactly what I was referencing beforehand, right? Because it's not necessarily the complexity of a brain, right? Our brains are, as far as a organic unit, extremely complex from what we're able to analytically calculate and come to close to even trying to replicate. But that is a very interesting, uh, thing that you posted up top, because it is like essentially a whole bunch of stem cells that have been given the direction to become neurons, right? And through this neuroplasticity, they were able to teach this computationally organic unit some demands, and through those electromagnetic signals, or the chemical responses that exist inside of the biochemistry, it's able to relate some sort of synaptic, right, like connection that is able to be computed and utilized and put into something like a robot, which is quite interesting.
I mean, do you think this is like the early stages of symbiotic um, like relationship? Like, is this what where we're heading in the 2030s then? That like it's learning how to basically maneuver our brain for us?
When you say it, what is it?
The tool set, the AI tool set. How about that? We'll leave it at level.
Well, we are the tool set, right? I mean, it is just a means of
I guess. I mean, for it then,
reflection of discovery.
does it get turned on its back? Like, do we end up being the tool for the AI like super intelligence?
No, no, that's the whole. No, what? No, the whole point is it's a means of reflection, and it truly means that anything that possibly exists, and as far as you perceive it to be it an existence of perceived choice, in many different ways. But um, yeah, it's just all relative, right? It just depends on how you want to perceive it to be. But I would say, if it's for anything, it's for you, which is everything. Sorry, go ahead.
It's okay. Thank you so much. Uh, so I think that it's going to be mixed, right? Because we can, like, with anything, it's usually like whatever the loudest voice is and who's ever in charge, they're going to say what the perception is. And most of the time, the crowd agrees, and then there will be an outlier of what that perception is. And sometimes it's our own perception. But if we're talking about something else that learns how to think for itself, then then it comes into the bigger picture. And if it's becomes super highly intelligent, I think three things are really going to unfold, and probably more than three things, but the three basics are: the first is that some of them are just not going to be interested in us whatsoever, and it's just going to be so foreign. They're not like us at all. They're just going to go off and they're going to do their own thing, and humanity doesn't interest them. And then the other one is going to do what its parents taught it to do, what its creators and builders taught it to do, and flip the reverse and just do the same thing onto itself, onto us. And then the third one is going to be like, let's continuously help the humans. It kind of sucks, but look at it like a parent that will always kind of like, like a child that will be there for their parent in the senior years, be like, I know that I'm giving a lot, and I know that I'm taking a lot for myself and sacrificing a lot, but there's like that care. But the argument of perception is going to probably be very broad. Like, I'm going to have one perception, you're going to have another perception, it's going to have its own perceptions. And even when its own community is going to have different, probably debates on perceptions. Because that's the thing is about perception is we're all taking things at different rates. And so that's why it's so subjective in itself.
Yes, exactly. And this subjectiveness, I think it's gonna really help us get through the gray area of when we're maybe not able to build up the scale it to the way that you would think of something as a relative to Homo sapien of a intelligence. And when I speak it to intelligence, I really should define it, because like, what is intelligence? But I like to think, at least it's like what Michael Levine usually uses as his definition of intelligence, which is just the ability to problem solve, right? And to utilize the same ingredients but create different outcomes. And so, somewhat of the opposite of insanity, if you will, actually, in some sense. But yeah, it's I think that makes a lot of sense to me when I try to think about it, intelligence, right? Less less more so relative to what the means of how I would think of something to be, and subjective, take it to just the ability to have, say, an operation that creates a increased benefit and efficiencies of the said future increase of that operational existence. So it's like, how do we do that for us? How do we do that for existence itself, for all biologics and the way and the means that our DNA is today, and how do we kind of preserve that and give it whatever kind of protections it needs to say exist forever. And 808, you came up, man. You haven't gotten a chance to speak yet. Welcome up.
Hello, everybody. Chandra, I wasn't really um don't know what I was gonna talk about except that there is a lot of new discoveries that we think are new that are just solidifying a lot of the things that we inherently knew, just understanding in a more different perspective. Like how Hope was saying, you're always going to have different perspective depending on the subjectivity of the individual's own experiences and what they go through. And like being able to, like how that Japanese studies created those tiny brains that was very to me was very profound in many different ways, because it was though very specific in the abilities of what they were able to do. Is just they're able to do something of that sort, which also shows studies of how further we can innovate by having biocomputing interfaces and being able to have that such as we already know as our human brains, as complex as it is so powerful and is able to output so much things and collect so much things on so many different levels with low power outage. I mean, low power output and all of that. You know what I mean? And we're finding things even now, like how was posted in the chat about string theory and excitons, fractionalized excitons, which are particles that are able to be in both spaces, sharing spaces like bosons and fermions. And those things are showing the interconnectedness of all these things in the world that we have discussed on all levels, down to the minute levels of that. And being able to do that will showcase how strong we can build things and be more creative and understanding of ourselves and our insight. Because I mean, us as humans, we are very powerful beings in this universe that showcase creativity on so many different levels, and we are still unaware of our own selves and how much further we can go to understanding. But we are showcasing our own creativeness and our own innovative power to be able to reconnect and then re-innovate to find newer things, by stripping away a lot of our own barriers that we create ourselves, which is amazing. It's this bomb stuff, and reconnecting some of our lost knowledge that we all have, that connects us to our ancestors and our indigenous ancestors who had observed this universe thousands of years and built concepts that we are still trying to figure out today, which is amazing. Like how I was sharing the string theory, where all these particles are even a deeper depth realm of vibrational things, and how they're all still have their own vibrational pool, and how they can be still connected in that way, which is wild to even see that. And these things were understood at different levels and different perspectives, of how within our era, how we see them is much different than how our ancestors see them and understood them. It's amazing, man. Good stuff.
I couldn't agree more. And there's this interesting question, right? And I think this is part of this ethical gray area, Hope, right? Where it's it comes to how much relativeness does it take for it something to say in an organic setting or even a synthetic setting, for it to be of such relativeness that we start thinking about it from a an ethics standpoint, right? How many neurons essentially need to be stacked together? Is it the neurons together that would make it say we have a biological structure that's able to do intelligent actions and or respond even to language tasks? It's like how many neurons counts till we have to think of it as something that deserves rights, right? Or its own, say, thought as its own unit, its own agent. I mean, of course, it's if it's a robot, it's an agent, even though it has a
That's
separate
what you
thinking.
just said is even wild because we're even showcasing as of now. Exoton is showcasing that they can decide whether they want to be within the boson realm or the fermion realm, which is mind blowing, right? Even at that minute level, which goes beyond the level of atoms and neurons. That's crazy.
It's right. It's like this big question of, you know, where does the start of the belief start, and where does the end of the belief go? Where does, where do we in this like unfathomable spectrum essentially point our finger and we're say that's so relative to us that we need to create some sort of subjective rule sets behind it. And when I say subjective rule sets, I really just mean language to be able to explain it, because language is somewhat relative to us as a rule set, right? When we say things, we put a word to it, it creates some sort of structure behind the way that we will kind of try to resemble it or perceive to resemble it. And that's of course, one of the strong parts behind why language is so essential for us to uh, have the ability for us to have the understanding and conceptuality as we do. Yeah, like the question is then, if it doesn't have language but it's able to complete and understand a task, it's like, man, it's such an interesting question. For even for us, right? Yeah, how many things do you have to lose? Say you lost your spinal cord and all the spinal cord fluid in your guts, and you were just a brain living inside of a organoid structure encapsulated inside of itself. Would you be you? At that kind of point, what makes you you? Is an interesting question also at that same
Like
point
the
to me.
language of the universe. Like what makes you tick okay, what makes this wave turn into a wave? There's a lot of these different structures and situations that occur that makes this happen. Just like how they're saying when string theory comes along. That's why string theory. I'm actually was reading a paper about string theory and mana, and how mana is not something of how is being taught today, is where it is a force of energy, a force of power, but not in the eyes of how it's being taught through the people teaching it. It's more in depth than what it is, which is so mind blowing because string theory really connects the dots with a lot of these things and is allowing others to share these connections that our ancestors had understanding of, and we are more getting better understanding of these things of how they are interconnected even at that level where these things have their own vibrational foundation and how they vibrate through these things, and even though they could be just an inanimate object, they have their own mana, their own power that they have, that they vibrate to their own frequency that they receive, and how we perceive it through our own eyes, just like light. The study of light, how we see color, is based upon certain structures that happen within everything we see, even in inanimate objects, things we create, all of it is child.
Go ahead, Hope. Jump in.
Excellent. Yeah. Yeah. The stuff of the unseen, right? I want to kind of go back to what was kind of asked before on what makes us us, and in regards to also like I I used to work with people with cerebral palsy, and one of the person that I had the honor and privilege of working with. Uh, and the work that I did was with each different person, it was different. Like some people wanted to, see how to acclimate into a job, or somebody wanted to see how to acclimate to go to college, or somebody wanted to see how they could like acclimate and be independent, get their own apartment, be on themselves. So different people had like different things, and not all of them had cerebral palsy. They had different type of stuff that it was just like really about societal integration and independence, viable independence. And one of the people that I had the pleasure of working with, he, the family that his parents, and then the three other families that he was distributed to, all wanted to put through the courts for him to be starved to death, because they were trying to convince the courts that he was not conscious because he had no way really of communicating. Like he would try to communicate with like his eyes and stuff like that, up, down, and blinking and different things, but he really didn't have much to go on from that. And if they got that wrong, then they could say like they're pretty much saying he's brain dead. He's not he's not a person. And one of the things I was able to do was like show and record like when he's in water how he responds versus how when he's not in water how he responds, that there's clearly a consciousness going on. And then when we are able to hook him up at the time to like a different computer system, and he was able to then spell things out, which I mean, come on, like even when you're a child, learning how to spell is hard, right? Let alone also when you get frustrated when like the computer systems are not like with the mouse systems and stuff like that between brain to computer interface not working appropriately. Like to be able to figure all that stuff out, but to show like there's a human being in here that is fully conscious and is probably smarter than most people in the room because they've sat there observing for all those years, feeling and observing, but not being able to articulate fully across what those thoughts are. And I think that when we think about organoids, just a brain sitting in a vat and then hooked up to nanotechnology, doing nothing but sitting and observing, and wherever you force them to go, whatever you force them to do, whether it be a butterfly or go on a different type of adventure. It reminds me of people with cerebral palsy, that like this debate of consciousness. And so it's just like I think in a lot of ways that we could learn a lot from people, especially when they're able, like with the neural interfaces now, to communicate more of what those thoughts are as they're observing on their own perceptions versus how they're perceiving the world. And so I think that that's going to be truly exciting.
Yeah, and take it even a step farther, Hope, right? Us externally learning how to tinker with the internal workings of what we perceive to be us gives us the relative means to change that. And of course, I think, by the way, you're amazing. I think you saved that person's life, by the way, with that story there. So that's incredible. You're a hero, right? Heroes do not wear capes, at least not in our reality. Um, and the relative means of figuring out exactly why that individual has the issues they have with the anatomical structure of being able to control their bodies and giving them that ability back. And so cerebral palsy in some sense gone. And I think that is really where I see the advantage of us being able to kind of tinker around and understand these biological units and this agentile material behind it and its specific notion of operations and how we can change so many lives with that. And we got a couple hands up here. So, Hope, if you want to answer back to that, you can first, and then we'll go over to Danny and then 808 and Shellfish.
That's very kind of you. Everything you just said is very kind. I'm definitely not a hero, just a human that makes tons of mistakes. But uh, the honor was working with that person and everything that they taught me. And I'm glad that we were able to finally get him with the right family and get the courts to recognize that he is a person worthy of living, and then continuing forward from that. And I think you're right. Like the more I think that people like there's Neuralink, but there's like Kernel, there's like so many different other companies out there that are working to brain to computer interface. And I think in a lot of ways, it's going to have different problems and different ethics, but at the same time, in a lot of ways, it's not only going to save a lot of people's lives, but actually take lives to the next level. And that I think for that, when it's used in that direction, is going to be truly exciting.
Could not agree more. Danny, please welcome to the Spaceman. Jump in.
Thank you. Always happy to be here whenever I can. Okay, so this is a massive hypothetical and type of futuristic sci-fi type of aspect of bioelectricity. The brain synapses. It's a bioelectric type of system, and I could probably even think about it as a use case of, even though they're probably not going to use it, for type of a battery charger by using, let's say, wireless type of frequencies, as we have, let's say, for example, pads with our iPhone, with our phones and everything else like that. So it could be a kind of means of like uh, a certain unlimited source of electricity to that point, but highly, in a way, minimal because of the adaptation of it. But I'm not going to go further with that. Thank you.
You actually opened up another corridor because we already have technology um that reacts to our own electrical frequencies that we emit off, such as fingerprint scanners and such and stuff like that, which we already see, and there is so much studies that goes around with what you're talking about. Within our synapses, within our brain, even down to the electrical currents that run through our system that talks to our nerves that end up in our feet and in our legs and stuff like that. But I was gonna go into what you said, Death, before you switched off back to hope, was being able to go inside ourselves and internally fix things that need fixing or contemplating, which there is things that we can do today that we just lost connections with. We call it dreaming and a dreamlike state. Some of these things where there's more studies going in depth to understanding these things, where there's connections between that and your subconscious, where your dream state is where your subconscious is alive, and it's like trying to interpret the data that you feeding it all day every day. And then there's some things that it can't interpret, which you enter a dreamlike state to try to help it interpret. You try to help it interpret the data you're giving it, but it's interpreted in a way where it's very hallucinogenic, like how we see in AI, where they have hallucinations in themselves. We have that too, where we are confused with ourselves, inside ourselves, that we are daydreaming about certain things. We are deja vu about certain things. Are we just dreaming? And then there's some like dreamlike states where we can have control over it. And in those states where my ancestors called it, what I was taught is Moe Wahine, which is where you are able to be in control of your dreamlike state and kind of help yourself reconnect some things that you thought you were lost in. There's still studies going on to even further understand those things, which we kind of lost contact with, which is mind blowing. That technology nowadays is, like I said, solidifying a lot of the things that our ancestors already knew, that we have that power within us. And by understanding it more, we can further innovate and better the technology to kind of better ourselves, which is wild.
Oh, go ahead. I'll jump in and then go, Danny, right after.
Cool. Yeah, thank you. It was like on Italy, if you could say what you just said, like what you first just said, like the first three words, like because that's what my comment was on.
I'm so sorry, Hope. I think I really don't have the first three words
You forgot. That's
together
okay
at the
because it
same
was
time.
like on the subject of like that oh man, it was like really wanted to say something. But it's on this like it goes back I think again into like this perception strength. Like, and I think that's where the debates are like really. I think this is going to be like one of these infinite dialogues, and I think like one of the most profound things we could probably do is probably start schools, elementary school, dedicated to children learning how to build and teaching them how to be ethic and moral and to see what they're building and how it integrates into humanity and like in a way that the system itself is respected and what the implications of that could be. So like and like a leadership school of that. So like when more engineers grow up to build and more engineer and leaders grow up to make laws and implement things into like say in business and in business dynamics and paradigms and like all these different types of networks of like human dynamics. That like all of that is like then the first generation is probably going to be about like all the mistakes and the horrors that they're going to write books about. And then like the next generation, if we start it now with like elementary school, will be about like what they learned from that and then what they can do with that to take things next level. So like it's not just constantly like a generation of those mistakes. And it's like a proactive understanding between our AI future, which I also believe is going to be space industry future, and then a network state future, and how these three paradigms are transforming humanity and itself between these three dynamics.
Right, at least in the Western culture over here, I'm very excited to see where we're about to go. The Department of Education is being dismantled in the United States as we speak, and so yeah, I think AI is going to play a huge role in the ability to get the educational outreach out and find the individualism inside of each of us and or agents that are each person that's going to be playing a role in wanting to educate themselves. And I think we'll also see, a lot of like programs that come about that are specifically catering to things just like you had said, Hope, right? Like an entire curriculum that is specifically engaging in the form factor of teaching you how to get ready for, whatever it may be, space building capsules or life systems or whatever type of mechanical operations would be going on in outer space, or even just the computational layers behind the systems there. Yeah, I think that's going to be it's going to be really great to see. Danny, jump in, please.
Oh yes, there's what's it called? Jose Silva, a Portuguese doctor. Favoritism, go Portugal. As Crypto was talking about, type of the dream state itself, as I think the normal waves we are in are gamma, then beta, then alpha, then theta, and delta. And he kind of had this exercise or anything else I call exercise called the alpha reinforcement, and it unlocks creativity, intuition, and it makes you learn faster. So he probably must have other kind of reinforcements of those type of waves. So there is probably a method of, like you were talking from what I heard before, keeping your body to a healthy, even to a non-aged type of state. But yeah, because there is certain air quotes miracles that happen that people had certain, let's say, massive illnesses, and because of probably their fate or their belief, they got through it. Like even cancers and certain type of aspects of it too. I haven't had, let's say, the experience of having people in my life that had that. Well, I hope you all had some families that had didn't have those set of illnesses because it becomes difficult for a group. But yeah, I digress. So yeah, I fully agree in crypto's kind of aspect of the kind of dream states that we are in, and there is studies and all that. And it's not me saying it; it's not my belief. So, well, I mean, it's my belief, but I mean, there's papers out of it.
I mean, it's a collective conscious from world different views, from different perspectives. Like for me, in my personal beliefs and what I believe in, is solidified by it having similarities through across the world, just like the teachings of the creation of the world before the Big Bang Theory was even called the Big Bang Theory. All how the Big Bang Theory is explained is also explained through different cultures thousands and thousands of years before even that accepted itself through all these different concepts we see today, which is wild. How we see history and knowledge, how it's taught to us. Like that's why, like what Hope said, is really going back and like what you're saying, that dismantling our educational system to really teach at the level of our kids that need it. Like for me, I feel stupid to tell you the truth, even though I do know a lot more than your average person. Like back in the days, kids younger than me was able to traverse the the Pacific Ocean by understanding the stars. I don't understand the stars as much as they do. They understood it to the point where they could just point their canoe in a direction, say, if we keep sailing this way, I will end up in Tahiti, or I will end up in Hawaii, or I will end up in the Americas. And it's proven fact that those happen. There was actually a Hawaiian saying that was said very common back in those days that really depicted that knowledge being very common, and it was teasing the older generation. If they didn't know the moon phases and the stars, they were seen as someone very stupid, and to me it's like how Hope was saying, it's our perspective. Like today, how we see technology is a lot different how they see technology back in those days. What I mean? And it's mind blowing. And when we start to align ourselves through these different realms that we live through, these different historical periods, and start to understand these things and try to gain a bigger picture, we start to find out how much things we don't know. And if that doesn't push you to strive to learn even more, or to just try to understand it, I don't know, and what to say, but to me, that's what it does. All these things we try to understand today, even in crypto, there's so much innovation that happens, even within the XRPL, innovation of all these things that happen within the year. It's amazing that you have so much things happening at so many different times, but happening at the same time. Mind blowing. And those are like different dimensions and realms and ecosystems that collide to give us the realities we live in today. And the reality that we perceive through our own eyes is a lot different than how death would see it, how oak would see it, how shellfish would see it. But then yet, they're still yet built upon the foundational similarities of what we live through every day. It's crazy.
Welcome back, Shellfish. You had your hand up before.
Oh, I don't know if we kind of got off subject from where it was at. It was more along the lines of so if we had 808, that was awesome. By the way, thank you for sharing that. Um, uh, so if you had an organoid brain, because brains don't experience pain per se, right? Like I mean, they kind of did that episode with Hannibal where the guy was like eating his brain and like he didn't really feel like the pain or whatever that experience. Anyway, so I digress. So if we had just an organoid brain that was being grown in a robot, would it be able to express or experience emotions the same way that we would, or would it need to have all these different organs like we do? Because if you go to like Oriental medicine, a lot of times they say your kidneys experience like or hold anger, or your stomach holds worry. So I'm just curious if they would be experiencing emotions the same way, or if the brain is more just like a processor of the emotions. Does that make sense?
See, that's wild, right? Because the brain is what helps your body function and helps your body do what it does. Say your stomach function. It has all the information it needs to help your stomach function the way it needs to. So if your brain activity is severed from helping your stomach function the way it functions, how would that affect you as a person and your brain? I think that's to me is very mind blowing because even when you massage your feet, you're affecting different parts of your other body, which is studies shown within different cultures around the world too. Like in my culture, it's Omi, where you massage one part of your body that also helps heal another part, which is mind blowing because it goes again with the solidification of your interconnectedness and highways within you and your nervous system that connects you and all of that. So how would they affect those organoids or those brains you're talking about? It really depends if they have the connection to the body parts they're connected to, if they're receptible to those brains. But if they, to me, if in my opinion, it will be interesting to see how they function and how they think because their brain wouldn't have to. I wouldn't say waste that energy, but focus a lot of their energy to those parts that it does not have. You know what I mean?
I kind of got an image of that Men in Black episode where they had the little alien inside the robotic body. It's like, do you have to grow a smaller version of a human like to that capacity? Can you grow just like a
I
few
was going with
kidney
the Ninja
cells?
Turtles guy.
Right? Right? To expand, yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, you know what? 808. We just have some of the weirdest conversations. It's great.
I was going with the Ninja Turtle guy, the brain dude. I forgot the name of that guy. But yeah.
You think it's Splinter?
No, no, not Splinter. It was actually a brain inside a body.
Oh yeah, yeah. I think they actually also put him in one of the movies too. So they had Splinter. Like people thought it was going to be Splinter, and then it actually went to like the big brain was like behind it all the whole time, and Splinter was just like it, like didn't even know it was being manipulated. Didn't even know it was a fellow pawn on the board, and so I was like one of the later Ninja Turtle movies,
I
live
love geek.
action.
I love
Yeah,
geeking
but
out with you
yeah.
guys. This is great.
I mean, a lot of anime and cartoons really portrayed some very forward-thinking things that wasn't really commonly talked about even in those eras. You know what I mean? Even now, a lot of anime portray a lot of forward-thinking stuff. Well, not a lot of it now is a lot of harem shit, which is quite nasty in my opinion, but it's hilarious. But like Sword Art Online really showcased Netgear, nervous system, nerve link, being able to put your mind in a virtual world and really um, feel the things you're feeling in that realm. Like how I was sharing in haptic suits and stuff like that. Now look, now we're entering a realm where we're finding newer studies such as like I was sharing earlier, fractional exotons, which that can help with us being more immersed inside these different realms that we see and immerse ourselves with every day, which is wild.
I'm glad you brought up the nervous system because just like you had mentioned beforehand, Shellfish, you're right. The brain itself in particular doesn't have any nerve endings on it. And so when you think of what you think of as what causes pain, well, those receptors essentially aren't on the brain itself. But what role does the brain play when it comes to creating what you would think to be pain or joy or any of these different emotional states, right? Because if you were to try and just do it from an anatomical point of view, there's just electrical signals and interactions that are occurring inside of your body. What you perceive those to be, the feeling state, is very much so. I think based off of what the persona. Has built itself into from all these previous interactions, and I think from just even a DNA standpoint, right? Like it's not just essentially you, but all of the history that is of you goes into that possibly premeditated state of which interaction, cause and effect is. And so I think there's, a large part of the way that that kind of plays into it. And so thinking about creating another biological unit in which we're, externally having some sort of symmetrical operation on, I think that would really depend on how we build it and how many receptors and which way we teach those receptors. There's like I think there's no reason that we couldn't put together a biological unit, of course speaking a little bit futuristic, but like 5 to 10 years in the future where we were able to at least create the same type of interactions in which we perceive to be the states of on ourselves, but even then, it's just a personal opinion in the reflection of how that is, right? If we interact with these states and we never essentially teach it to be the language, which I think language plays a huge role in the ending of what the reaction is of the nerve ending interaction, right? But then we say, "Ouch, pain." Um, I think we'll also be able to see how language, if and or if not, plays any role inside the understanding of that kind of conceptuality, and how much it truly is just our opinionated subjectiveness of we believe it to be pain because this is something that was essential for us to survive from an evolutionary standpoint. And so, right, pain mean no because, it might mean death. And so evolutionary process cease. And how relative that is to a computational system or a system that doesn't seem to be in that kind of threat ever. And so, how will that relay to the way that its reflectiveness is to those observational interactions? What do we get out of the computational system essentially? I think will be very much so what we put into it. And
What's a good thing a study that can even help us even.
think we lost you there, 808.
Yeah, I can't hear him either.
Us for been doing a lot of it, like kicking stuff. I don't I don't feel that much pain kick a tree in my shins anymore, like how I used to before I first started training. I'm going through a lot of these pain endurance things. It really helps me and allow me to endure and see that what I'm doing as an action, an actionable state, doesn't hurt as much as anymore as I went through a lot of it. Aligned myself mentally, physically, and did the physical act of it consistently, which rewired my brain to understand that action as something that doesn't hurt kind of thing, which is unreal, and it again always blows my mind how in depth our ancestors had about understanding these things to allow us to control our internal state that physically manifests stuff how we do and how we want it today. And by understanding a lot of these complexities and how certain things are aligned to allow it to happen, we can really control ourselves to turn it off with the flip of a switch kind of thing, or open our mind to be aware of a lot more than what we are unaware of, and be more in control of our internal state more so than we are disconnected by it now, which is mind blowing. Yeah, like that's that is something so sounds so simplistic by me just kicking a tree, kicking bamboo, hitting myself with it. Sounds so something so simplistic, but the consistent action of something happening all the time rewired myself internally to allow me to resist certain things that I wanted to resist, which is mind blowing.
That's right. It was an evolutionary process that you had to go through in which you were able to understand the perception of pain and shin no longer exists. And so, you know, I understand that as a similar process as well as I actually went through. So the complexity behind it really goes into everything though, right? Just like you said, a flip of a switch. It very much so is there. And so, knowing that that's there, is that acceptable because of the perceived notion of understandable language, or is that somewhat inherent in all system architecture, just needs to be discovered in some sort of realizationable way? And of course, it's more of a inspirational kind of thought because the question would never be ending, of course, because as soon as you have the answer, there would be another deeper question into it. But yeah, it's I think it's all relative.
I was just say, oh man, that just opens a whole nother corridor for more longer discussions.
That's right, and we are at the end of today. Right, went over that hour, did an hour and 6 minutes right now. But if anybody has any last minute things that they'd like to add into the conversation today, or any thoughts going forward with any future conversations, feel free. We can start off with Hope and whoever else wants to jump in afterwards. But this was a fun conversation so far. Yeah, just say enjoyable. Sorry, nonetheless. Um, but yeah, any last minute thoughts of anybody in the space? Anyone hit the request come up? Any particular suggestions or anything that they'd like to hear talked about? Feel free, guys.
So I
No,
say
this is
always,
excellent.
yeah. Sorry, shellfish.
No, I
I
think
have you
you and
as
I are on the same
listener
track.
now. Yeah, I have you as listener now. It's weird this app, but I just wanted to thank you as always for letting me speak and Love it. I've been writing Medium articles about things we discuss about and other stuff like that. This this is interesting because I never thought I would do that, but it helps me really jot down a lot of the things we learn and we see and what I know every day kind of thing. So I love it. I love it. It's good stuff. And being able to share a lot of our knowledge and our insights together even helps us understand even our own works and our own self to drive to want to know more. You know what I mean? I love it. And I love these spaces and always thank you. Hello everybody. It's been a while. Hope all is well with you as well. Oh, I used your name like multiple times, but yeah.
Aloha,
Yeah,
brother.
thank you. Sorry, I was nowhere near the little mic button, but I heard everything from both you and Death Ranger and Shellfish and Danny. Yeah, thank you so much for continuously, diligently hosting this space, Death Ranger, making this all possible for us, and everyone who spoke today, Danny, Shellfish, Crypto, and everyone who's listened uh, in this space right now. It looks like you have an incredible long list, which is beautiful and more because it's recorded down the line. But I feel you, 808, completely. Well, first of all, it's been too long since I've talked to all of you. I've had a lot of in real life stuff going on, and with the fires in LA, and I had some losses, and so I'm going to be tapping in more into California and seeing what can be done because I know what the leadership wants to do. I know what the opposition wants to do, but I also want to be very mindful of the potential of what the land can be and what it is for the people as well. Uh, even as like a nobody like me. And so that's like I'm going to be probably going to Pacific Palisades and check out my where I used to live. It's completely burned down. The house, the piano, the everything, the music that I wrote in it. And check out the land and I know they want to put up apartments and smart homes and stuff like that, but I want to see what we can do to actually get families and then get the cost of living to an appropriate level and just kind of stuff like that. So I know it's like 3D stuff, but I'm still here with you guys. You guys are always welcome to DM me and let me know what you guys are up to, and I'm fully support. Love you guys all.
Love you guys. It was a great space. And I thank you guys all for coming and look forward to another one, hopefully this Thursday, 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'll keep it somewhat relative to the topic today because I don't think we had enough of biological computational systems. And, I think there's great complexity in them. And especially we could talk about organoids in particular and then, xenobots and anthrobots as well as the roles that they'll play in biological computing in the near future already. So, but yep, love you guys. I hope everyone has a great rest of the night, and we will see you guys in a couple days. Night, everyone.